I'll jump right into it. I'm excited to spend the next portion walking everyone through the progress and direction of the Block Design Collective. It's only been 8 months since we brought on Chuck and Tino as our first two directors, and just a few months since Lauren's joined us. And in that short time, I think we've accomplished a lot. And I think we're in a strong position to make a pretty big impact for the industry. So to start, I'm going to walk you through the overall direction and vision of the BDC, and then I'll be handing it over to some of our key partners to share what we're doing to create meaningful change for concrete masonry. And then at the tail end, each of our directors are going to walk through successes that they've had in their regions. So to frame everything we talk about today, I want to ensure everyone knows that our mindset is we want to drive market share to increase the consideration for CMU as a building material on projects. And we do that through the strategic engagement with the AECO community, which is architects, engineers, contractors, and owners. And you'll hear us talk about that throughout. It's important to understand that what we're building with the BDC is truly a transformational effort. Our industry has really never had a national one-stop shop for designers to access both resources, education, technical assistance, and project support for all things concrete masonry. Other industries like wood and steel, they all have well-established national organizations that serve this role. And so we're creating that same kind of or foundational hub for concrete masonry. As an industry, we already have a great supporting cast of state associations, producers, mason contractors, so the BDC can really serve as the banner and connecting thread tying all of that together. We organize our offerings into four what we call pillars. Resources and tools are online materials that help designers create more efficient masonry designs. Education and training are targeted programs that build knowledge and excitement around key messages that our group wants to portray. Design assistance is project support is what we have listed there. Is free access for architects and engineers that we can give them hands-on support to remove barriers to the use and implementation of CMU on their projects. And then project engagement or concept proposals are concept stage proposals that are intended to directly influence decision makers and projects to maximize opportunities for concrete masonry. And these efforts all fall into either indirect and direct influence. So we have to do both. That's part of any good program. Direct influence being things that are a little bit more measurable, project specific impacts, like when a concept proposal might result in masonry being chosen for a building envelope. And where indirect influence is a lot more broad, helping just remove barriers, improve design efficiency, and giving tools to designers to do that. That helps build their confidence in using
Yeah.
masonry and creates trust in our group. About 99% of projects are going to be determined, or the material for those projects is going to be determined without us in the room with that design team. So indirect influence lets us cast a wider net and position masonry for more opportunities across the board. So another way to look at that is direct influence might give us maybe 90% influence on 10 projects, but maybe with that same amount of effort on indirect influence, that might give us 5% influence on 1,000 projects. So we're just casting a wider net with a smaller movement. So quickly, I wanted to share a timeline just to put in perspective how we built this out. I was hired on in July of last year, so it's been just over a year for me. Since then, we've established the Block Design Collective, and we've built a board of directors. We've hired 3 regional directors. We issued after that an RFP to build what you'll hear about in a little bit is a robust directory of consultants to help us deliver on a lot of our objectives. We also launched a monthly webinar series that we began last month. And then coming up, we're hoping to bring on the remaining 2 directors in Region 2 and 5. At this point, it'll probably be September at the earliest, but maybe even a little later than that. And then finally, we're going to be targeting a launch campaign in September, which you'll hear about more later. In the long term, there's two things that I really believe that are important for us to keep front of mind and to advance, specifically once we've established ourselves and built out the foundation for things. The first thing we want to do is drive and communicate innovations for the industry. Woodworks has done this brilliantly with mass timber, as we've all seen. And we need to drive things forward for our industry to create that same level of excitement. We want to be the train that everyone wants to hop on. And then the second piece is really, I view this as a non-negotiable for us at this point. If we're going to grow the team and we're going to build this into a truly impactful effort, we're going to need to find other avenues of financial support. And while we're already exploring some grant and partnership opportunities, we really see the need in the long term to secure sponsorships. In order to do that, we just have to have a good foundation built in order to be able to market those opportunities to potential sponsors. So we're going to transition now to talking about some of our strategic initiatives that we've prioritized as a group. And to help discuss each of these six initiatives and describe the specific progress we've made in each, I'm going to be bringing in some of our consultants and BDC board members to help give examples of how we're getting them involved, to help pull these things together. And they also have a lot of experience working with these things and understand the real impact that it has to the industry. So starting with resources, our vision here is to be the one-stop shop for concrete masonry design resources. Our target this year is that includes a website launch in late September and then the development of 40 new tools and resources. And on the right side, you'll see how that content, how those 40 tools break down, including standard details, specifications, checklists, schedules, calculators, and then about a dozen promotional flyers. And all of these items are either completed, undergoing technical review, or actively in development. I'm going to bring in Sam now. He's with Force Consulting, and he also serves on our board of directors. He's engaged in developing some really good content for us, and he's going to talk real quick about the importance of this initiative.
Yeah, thanks, Riley. So looking at the some of the different things that we've worked on, some of the different details, I really kind of look at this and I think about, boy, back in the day when I was working as a designer, or even in my current role working on different structural coalitions, having these standards, these details, and some of the checklists and tools that we're developing really does help designers move from what we have for code requirements all the way down to having better designs. And when I say better designs, I mean better designs for them, for one, better designs for the owners, but then better designs for all of us. So we really want to make sure that we're giving them those tools to help kind of guide their direction to having a masonry design that's going to be efficient, effective, and able to be something that we feel proud of. One, but we also have a very competitive design that's out there working really hard to compete with other material options that they have. So really improving this designer's workflow is something that I really have a strong passion for, and anybody that I work with on a day-to-day basis certainly knows that I want to help everybody in their workflow, and these tools are really going to aid in that. So if I just break them down a little bit of what they are, some of the checklists that have been developed are really, again, trying to take things from the code and bring it into just kind of a step-by-step process for designers. We've talked just previous section about lack of education in masonry design. We talk about a lot of the frustration that maybe some of you have, or masons or others have with having efficient designs. A lot of times engineers just don't know what to do, so they just go based on some other experienced person within a firm. So checklists are really meant to be, well, actually, here's what the code says today, and here's just a step-by-step process. And so those checklists with those examples should really help designers. Details and schedules, I mean, my gosh, the number of times that I do a detail review for a designer and we see details that have been around for 25, 30 years. They're not efficient, they're based on old products, or it's a really frustrating process. So having a library of concrete masonry details on the web that people can download and kind of set as their standard, but that's going to really great for helping those designs be more efficient, but it also gives us a process to actually influence, what they see as a standard, because they don't know. They just based it on, again, the last 25, 30 years. Now we can change. Now we can impact. Now we can show them a variety of different, shapes and colors and strengths and all the different options that you have with concrete masonry. We can give them that through having updated schedules and details, and really kind of expands their horizon for what they can do. So the resources, again, I'm really excited about, really kind of going from what they see as code requirements all the way to much better designs.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Next is design assistance. You guys can read everything that's on there, so I'll just move on. Our vision is to offer hands-on free assistance for designers. And to do that, we've built a robust database of consultants that cover a full range of topics from moisture control to joint control, all of those important topics that we know designers come to us with questions about. And we have coast to coast coverage that we can ensure that as inquiries come in, that we can pair them with local experts that know the codes, that know kind of the nuances of how things are built in different regions. We think that's going to help us not only deliver on this initiative, but in a lot of other areas, we're going to be able to use that and lean on that group to help us build this into a really impactful initiative. So today we've done more than 70 inquiries, as you saw, and someone who's been helping us out with that and has been doing project support, design assistance for a long time is Mike Schuler. I think he's on. He might be on just by
I am.
phone. So
No, I'm here.
okay. I hear. Oh, you're great. Oh, there you
I'm
are,
visible in
Mike.
everything.
I'll turn it over to you, and you want to just tell us a little bit about how you get involved in this.
Yes, I'll step through this quickly. Thank you, Riley, and I know many of you on the board. Very happy to be involved. This is a role I've had, and my firm has had a similar role with the Rocky Mountain Masonry Institute for over 30 years as design assistants. So, what does design assistance look like? As Riley said, it has to be quick, and our goal is to have an initial response to an inquiry the same day or within 24 hours, and sometimes that's answering questions one-on-one through phone calls, emails, web forms. We'll review design calcs, review design details. And one thing I found really helpful over the years is actually going out to architecture and engineering firms and helping them develop their in-office design standards, similar to what Sam was saying. Even simple things like making sure their lap splice schedule is not overdone, or changing the two-bar bond beam to a single bar bond beam like you see here, which structurally is fine almost all the time, has a beneficial impact on cost and constructability. So I think maybe our primary role is to just help designers become more comfortable with masonry design and reduce job site issues that arise when you get crazy details or just outright poor design. So designers that have these standardized procedures and simple ways to develop designs will use concrete masonry more often. And so we provide them with the resources they need, including standardized details, such as we see on the right here. On the owner side, owners are making decisions early on in the process to decide how they want their buildings to look and how to fit that within their budget. We had one of our tech calls maybe back in June was actually from a block supplier. It was a nice, easy call. The manufacturer was working with an owner wanting to build a warehouse/office building and asking for a 12-foot tall wall. Do I have to go a 12-inch block? What's a typical grout and rebar spacing? Working on a rough cost, we rounded up a real quick design with them, and with good news. You don't need to go to 12-inch block. You could build these walls with 8-inch blocks, very reasonable 24-inch rebar spacing to have an economical design. And so that's helps the producer get a realistic cost to the client when they're making those decisions early on in the design phase. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this is an example from a few weeks ago. The contractor was bidding a project, noticed some odd control joint requirements, very tight spacing, and we were able to help provide guidance on this project. Took some time, about an hour and a half, to lay out control joints and send design information to the architect so they understood what was done and why, so that next time they take the first step on their own. So overall, this whole design assistance is in a way being a friend of Masonry, somewhat of a mentor to answer tech calls that range from simple things like, where do I find this in the code, to actually sitting down and working on details and design calcs with them. So we improve the designer's workflow, speed up design, getting them thinking about constructability. They'll use Masonry more and use block more. So we've had really good success over the years with this approach. And yeah, I'm looking forward to helping the Block Design Collective develop that expertise and offering that to designers, owners, and others in the industry.
Hey, Mike, I have a question, Michael.
Yeah,
Um, we
sure.
built buildings 25, 30 years ago out of 8-inch block in the seismic zone. Why all of a sudden are engineers using 12 and 16-inch block on the same building?
Well, things change over the years. I know, sometimes the wind loads are all over the place. They change about every 5 years. And sometimes that has not a beneficial effect on our design. So some of it's related to loads, same with seismic, but a lot of it's familiarity. And for example, I know a big designer in our area. They had design standards in their office. We're never designing this type of wall less than 12-inch block. But if we can get in their office and work with them, sit them down and say, yeah, I know this is your standard, but 8-inch worked great or 10-inch worked great. We need that one-on-one interaction to um, help them feel comfortable with what we in the industry know will work for them.
So could part of it be they're afraid of liability?
Oh, it's the main part. Well, they're afraid of liability and they want to save money.
Right. Well,
I can give you a 12-inch block wall that'll work in every building across the country, and I save a lot of money on design doing that, but that's not doing the best job for the owner or their client. So we want to help
especially
them
when,
come up with,
yeah, especially when we're trying to
cost-effective
do some stuff.
designs that make them feel good
Yep.
about it as well.
Yeah. That is the main purpose of it. I'm going to keep us moving if that's okay.
Yeah,
Next, we
thank you.
have. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate that update. Mike
Mhm.
is has been fantastic, and we really are blessed to have him as part of our team. So for AECO engagement, this is a pretty foundational initiative, especially on the indirect influence front. It's going to help us increase the recognition of the BDC and position us to drive key messages. So I'm not going to get into all the numbers because you've seen these 100 times, but they're listed on the left, and then what we've accomplished so far this year. I'd say we're pretty well on track to meet our year one targets. Um, Next, I think this. Yes. So we realize that our impact as a team can only go so far. So to really exponentially increase our reach, we're best suited having focused efforts on equipping local block promoters, architectural sales reps, and association level folks. So equipping the industry is another key initiative for us. We've got a launch that we have actually specifically targeted towards the industry to spread awareness and get every one of our partners, everyone in this industry on board. Um, and then through that, we can have a much greater impact by kind of arming our forces. So for our partners, we're offering a few different things. If we go back just real quick, we have um, a partner event form that they can use to engage us and help us um, uh, deliver on events and different things that they're trying to do regionally. We can help advertise things, enhance their efforts, provide a toolkit of resources and collateral, and we want to make sure that we are giving them every resource available to not only make their own messages effective, but also to amplify everything that we have going on, that we can piggyback on all of the interactions that are happening with the AEC community. So we also want to engage groups specifically. So we want to do 15 targeted producer presentations on the BDC, getting our regional directors as well as myself engaged with our producer members and tell them how that they can leverage what we have, what we're all about. And so we have a lot of plans in the coming months to do that. And one of the Primary ways we're going to do that, and now you can go to the next slide, is going to be with this this launch that we've spoken about a couple times. That's not only going to be targeted at AECOs, but we're also going to do a portion of this that really engages with and equips local producers. So I'm going to turn it over to Clutch, who's leading that effort for us. And they'll talk a little bit about what the plan is for this coming September.
Yeah, thank you, Riley. John is also on the line if I miss anything. He's helping a lot with the messaging that we're building for this. But really, the launch of this is intended to formally introduce this offering to both producers and what we're calling the Masonry family, but then also AECOs. So really working on building messaging and materials to help build that awareness and encourage participation, and also support long-term engagement with the Block Design Collective. So we really want to make sure that you guys are poised to be the go-to resource for design support and that project conversion. So building different messaging as to what the Masonry family can do to help promote this and help get this out to networks, but then also communicating the other side of that, communicating out to the people that we want to be interacting with, about what they can expect from the Block Design Collective, what they can go, what kind of questions they can go to them with, what resources are available. So we're building out this framework. So what you'll see here, we're building a couple kind of what is the Block Design Collective, which are really our foundational pieces. And then through that, we're going to aim to push that out through news releases. Within the industry, we're working with Concrete Products to get a placed article, and get a feature in there so we can kind of help push that out as well. And then it'll also be incorporated into our paid marketing plan at a national level. So we'll have that piece driving to the Block Design Collective to help build up that awareness.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Moving on, project proposals. You guys are going to hear a little bit more specific details on these in the regional portions of this when our directors jump in. So I won't get into this specifically, but obviously our goal is to directly influence projects that we can identify in the early stages of design. One quick example, and this is our kind of our first test run on this. If you go to the next slide. Is this this structure here where a producer approached us with an opportunity, who had a foot in the door with an owner. He engaged us, and through what we're doing at the Design Collective and the consultants that we have, and we developed a preliminary set of structural plans. And then we turned that over to the producer who had a contractor partner, and they developed a cost estimate, pulled that together for a proposal to the owner. And at the end of it, the owner elected to use Masonry for his structure. So this is a pretty small structure, just a single kind of warehouse style. But obviously it was a success and something that we can build off of. Since then, we've developed a little more of a defined process, and this is just what we put together as a flow chart to describe our system for delivering these and how we can do that based on where the project's at and what we have to work with. And this is just going to help us deliver things a little more efficiently and with a higher level of quality. Next one is delegated design. So this is kind of on the forward thinking front, just a very exciting initiative that we're trying to get off the ground and drive through the Design Collective. And this is the delegated design of masonry structures. And we believe that shifting the design community to deliver with this method is going to have a tremendous impact for our industry. It's going to boost design efficiency and also seek to expand the scope of masonry. So with the BDC, we're trying to get the right people involved. We're trying to standardize the process and have the right supporting resources that we need to communicate that out to the industry and the AECs at large. Jamie Davis with the firm Ryan Biggs Clark Davis, one of our partners. She's on the call, I think.
Yes.
Jamie, are you on? Yeah, okay.
I'm here.
If you want to walk us through, obviously, Jamie, if you don't know her, she's one of the pioneers of this initiative even before my time. I'll turn it over to her, and she's going to just talk you through what this process is and how it really benefits the industry.
Sure. So you've heard a little bit scattered throughout today about the challenges that masonry has, and a lot of them stem right back to the lack of education coming out of schools, the fact that people are just using archaic details that were used by people that they worked with 20, 30 years ago. Nothing's been updated. Masonry is not used as much on a day-to-day basis, so the designers are rusty on it. And all of this leads to very inefficient designs, which we've heard of, and which Mike spoke to too. And then this perception that masonry is too expensive. So Light Gauge went through the same issues as masonry, and they solved it by getting Light Gauge to go to a delegated design workflow. And so that's what we're trying to explore now. Could we do the same thing that Light Gauge does, that Precast does, and that other materials do, where the designer is responsible for showing the structure, for doing the load path, for providing the load demand that's on these elements, but they're not necessarily responsible for the nuts and bolts of designing that element all the way through to completion. And that's done by a delegate engineer who is highly skilled in that piece of design. And this really well melds into our design assist program. So current practice, we all know this workflow. The engineer, they don't have enough fee, they don't have enough knowledge, they're spitting out designs that are not efficient, and we get a very inefficient, costly structure. And a delegated design flow, engineer still responsible for the building. He delegates the design of the masonry components. So the masonry contractor hires a delegate engineer. Now you're putting out designs that are highly efficient and work well with that mason. So overall benefit, engineers will choose to design masonry more readily if they could delegate it. And you're getting a better, more efficient and costly product in the end. So that's the workflow that we are trying to explore.
Very good. Thank you, Jamie. So now's the kind of the last portion. I'd say the highlight of what we want to go through today. I'm going to bring in our three regional directors. So Chuck's going to kick us off, and then Lauren and Tino are going to come in on the back end just to talk a little bit about what they've accomplished specifically in their regions up to date. So Chuck, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Riley. And I know we're a little pressed for time, so I'm going to burn through these as quickly as I can. So in Region 1, similar to the 4 pillars that Riley showed you, we've essentially settled into these focus areas. And I'm just going to give you guys some quick examples of successes that we've had in them. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order to stay in the vein of what Jamie was just explaining to you. So we, for delegated design, have had 4 meetings so far. We started out with just 5 people, and those meetings, the last one we had a dozen people on the call. All disciplines are represented, and what you're seeing on the right here is just a snapshot of the guide that Jamie has created, and her and Phil Leden are reviewing this. Phil has created one of these on his own for his region. So Phil and Jamie are going to make sure that nothing is missing. And then Jason Thompson is going to do an internal QA QC review of the guide. And then we are going to get that to Clutch. And then the next step will be to begin educating masons and general contractors. So the next area is content delivery. As Riley mentioned, we began the live webinar series at the end of last month. I gave the first one. It was the 5 S's of concrete masonry. It was very well attended. 120 people registered. We had 64 stay with us all the way to the end. It is available in the Block Learning Hub right now. And what you see on the right there is just a little testimonial that we received from one of the producers out in Region 5. So for project proposals, my example is not as large as the one that Riley showed you, but this came to us from Skanska, from their headquarters in Parsippany. They are doing some work for MetLife Stadium right now to help them get ready for the FIFA World Cup next year. And currently on the grounds, there is a tented structure that's available for the families of players to congregate before and after games. And just during a lunch meeting with one of their pre-con engineers, he started telling me about this and said that MetLife has asked them for some ideas to turn this into more of a permanent structure. And so I know Riley showed you a flow chart for this process of putting project proposals together. And I will tell you guys that I used a much more watered down version. I simply said to this gentleman, could this be block? And he said, you know what? It could, but what does that look like? And so from there, I connected Skanska to Jamie's firm, ironically. And what you see on the right are some elevations that Jamie's firm put together. It is currently still with MetLife. So we don't know whether or not it's definitely going to move forward. But the bigger success here is that I spoke to that pre-con engineer earlier this week, and he told me that they have another project that he's going to be receiving drawings for soon, and this one has a lot of masonry. And he said, I don't know if you want to look at it. And I said, of course I do. So that really lends itself to what Jamie just explained. We'll get those drawings and see if there are any inefficiencies or areas where we can add some block. And this one, just an FYI, is a little over 7,000 blocks. So again, not a big building, but we do view it as a success in Region 1. Next, project support. So this is the design assistance we're offering. This was pretty ideal for the way we want these to go. This came in through Glenwood Mason Supply. The architect is SLCE in Manhattan. They had a question about encasing some steel beams with masonry in order to achieve a 2-hour fire rating. I leaned into David Biggs to help me with this. And I know Mike said, ideally we want to get these turned around in a day. I think the important thing to note is that we responded within 24 hours, and then it was a few days before, back and forth emails, but we did get this one turned around in a few days. And then lastly, promotion. And the way I've chosen to approach, just overall promotion in Region 1 is to use a very strategic account approach. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Brian Austin. I know he's on the call. This is something that I learned when I was with a team that Brian led, which seems like a lifetime ago, but it's something that takes a little bit of time, but it's very effective. And what I'm referring to is, you go through a discovery process. So these are the companies that I've chosen to target. As I'm sure you can deduce, they all have multiple offices throughout the region, and some have national footprints. And we're already starting to see some good progress with this, but again, it does take some time. We are using HubSpot, if you go to the next slide, as a means of tracking what we're doing with these companies. So this is just a snapshot of what I see when I go into Gilbane's Newark location. In the middle are previous tasks that have been completed, and at the top in the middle are what's upcoming. On the right are the contacts that I've entered in there. And so it's a good way to ensure that things aren't falling through the cracks, especially with the companies that we want to build strategic relationships with. And I did want to mention this one as well, because this is a nonprofit. RIDE stands for Rhode Island Department of Education. As you can see, they have quite a bit of work on the boards right now, and there's over 50 projects that are currently going on. Of course, some of those are things like, boiler replacements and MEP work, but they are a busy organization for a small state. And when I started, the gentleman that you see here, Dr. De Silva, was pretty against having block as a veneer product. And since then, we have done nothing but make progress with him. He's aware of who we are. He's aware of what we're doing. And his door remains open. So this is the last email that he sent me. So we now need to begin working on creating some sort of report that includes the data that he's requested. So I know that's a really quick snapshot, but I am excited about the direction that we're heading in Region 1. And I believe I'm now turning it over to Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I've been on board for about 3 months now, and I have a few wins to share, but I wanted to share that what I've been prioritizing in my first 3 months is really building relationships, getting out to the various markets, and kind of learning the intricacies of those markets as well as the industry as a whole. My focus has really been listening, asking questions, figuring out where we can make the biggest impact. I'll continue to build off of what I've learned, to keep kind of figuring out what my strategy is going to be moving forward. And while we're not competing in any way, we're very collaborative as a team. I will say a little healthy competition never hurt anyone. So while I'm not quite at the level of Chuck and Tino yet, don't worry, I'm coming for them. So here's an example of a design assist question that I received. And so you guys can read it if you're interested. But the point of this is kind of to show that this may look like a small win, but these moments and kind of these situations are how we build trust, credibility, and position ourselves as the go-to resource for questions like this. So some travel highlights. So I've been to more places than just these two, but I wanted to highlight kind of these two trips in particular because I think they gave me a lot of insight. So I met with 4 Mason contractors, some in St. Louis and OKC. And so there's one potential project proposal coming from one of these meetings that they're going to need an estimate and a preliminary design. We're working through that. Gain a better understanding of some of the challenges that exist from their perspective, and then discuss some innovative efforts and some challenges that could exist with some of these efforts, such as delegated design, prefabrication, and how the BDC team can assist them. And then just kind of working to build out relationships for future success. And then I attended a lunch and learn with Best Block for CWA architects. And so just kind of gave them a little spiel on what the Block Design Collective is doing so that if they have any questions, they can know who they can reach out to. And then we also met with 2 engineering firms and gave some copies of the code books out and just discussed, how we can be of assistance and ways in which that we could help them do their jobs better. So some behind the scenes efforts. Obviously, there's a lot of front facing things that go on, and those are incredibly important as well. But there's some things I've been trying to drive in the background to help. And so I wanted to share some of that. So national content creation. I helped push drive some of the Block Byte. They're 1-page high level education resources. So those will be able to those are getting fine tuned now with some experts, and then we'll have those out hopefully by the launch date. Some upcoming presentations that I'm giving. So we just recorded an architectural records webinar on resilient design. I'm speaking at the Texas Masonry Convention and have a unique sponsorship that I put forth for that one. So I think that should be good. And then there's another Block Learning Hub webinar that's coming out. And then I also created some insight forms. And so this is just to kind of make sure that I'm targeting my efforts effectively within the region. And so there's different forms for the different audiences, and they just ask pretty straightforward, but like 8 questions. And so my hope is to get in front of people and hopefully, whether conversationally have them or if there's, ways in presentations to get some feedback so that we can make sure that we really are understanding their needs and challenges. So I can prioritize accordingly based on kind of what seems like, high priority items for them. And then all of this kind of feeds into my long-term goal of, being intentional with my actions, delivering value to the industry, and, setting up for sustainable success that continues to operate well. And so that is it. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tino.
Yeah, hey everyone. So we can go to the next slide. I figured the best way to kind of illustrate is through what I've been working on. So I'm going to show you examples of how I've helped an architect, an engineer, a GCCM, and then a couple other ways that were impactful in Region 3. So this is one, I specifically know this project because the architect and the engineer are both named Jeffrey. So we call them Structural Jeff and Architect Jeff. So they do these storage sheds, less than 5,000 block, but it's always been a prefab metal, or it's been this CMU, just an exterior with just wood trusses. So their owner actually said, have you considered CMU? And they said no. So they reached out to us. And so we helped them work on a CMU solution here. And they said they didn't realize the engineer had no idea how to design with CMU, and the architect didn't know how to detail it. So we went through, you can see we marked up all their details to give them tips, tricks. We gave them redesign efforts, control joint locations, rebar strategies. And although this was just 5,000 block on this project, the architect said they work on hundreds of storage sheds a year, and that knowing that CMU is a good solution, they're going to be coming back to us to talk about all their projects for the next year. So this was a big win. And the title of the project is in the bottom left. So drawing reviews can lead to adding CMU on jobs is the big takeaway here. Can we go to the next slide? Here's an example of a project we helped an engineer with. So this was after a webinar where we presented on delegated design to structural engineers of Nebraska. an engineer reached out and said, "Hey, is this something you can help with?" Where they had 3 cores that were cast in place concrete, and they also had steel brace frames on this project. And they said, "Can we do CMU? Can we do CMU as a lateral system? And if so, can we remove the steel brace frames to make it cost effective?" So this is one where we engaged a consultant, and it was Sam in this case, and we gave him a structural design that worked. And we went through multiple iterations that make sure it was the best solution with them. And this removed the form requirement for those cast in place concrete cores because you're doing it at CMU, and it removed all the steel braces on this multifamily project, showing value. This was one where the engineer did not feel comfortable designing with CMU, did not know what strengths and block was available in the area as well. So we reached out to the producers in the area, made sure they were comfortable in speccing the CMU on the job as well. So this is a great win for multifamily and how we showed value to engineers. So next one is GCs and owners. I've actually made a really big effort in communicating with pre-construction teams because they see it and they evaluate systems really early on. And with precast and prefabricated metal, it's really easy because you just show them a massing and they'll spit up a design and a cost straight to the GC. So I'm trying to do that with concrete masonry in our region. So this is one where it was a school addition. And so we worked through the structural, energy, fire, sound to make, and it's also a storm shelter design here where we came up with a CMU solution and even a basis of design for the other materials so that we look like we're one package. And we gave them even quantities to the mason contractor so that they can spit up a design, an estimate pretty quick. And so this is pre-construction support. And so this is a fantastic opportunity. Mark, you just asked, with these efforts to support design, have you been adding lump sum pricing too? This is a full package. That's the big hole. If you can get a full number in precast, you can get a full number in prefab steel. We should be able to deliver a full number that includes a concrete masonry scope. So this one is in the GC's hands right now. And so we're waiting to hear back, but the pricing looks good. And this was leading precast and they wanted to compare it with a CMU option. You can go to the next slide. Here's one. This is a public market. This was in the structural drawing on the bottom. You see a lot of steel. And I don't know if you guys have been to public markets. Where I was in Milwaukee, there was a Milwaukee public market, all steel all day. So we went into the pre-con team. This was Q is the GCCM on the project and said, we just want you to consider masonry. I'll tell you if it's possible. I'll throw an option. You make the decision. And so we looked at the drawing and we found that there's a lot of opportunity for it to be CMU and to reduce cost. The stairwells, the elevator shafts, the building service enclosure, those are all partition walls that the structural engineer just ignored and just said steel, architect, contractor, do whatever you want with those walls. But if you took a little bit more time and you made those CMU, suddenly that can be part of your gravity system. That can be part of your lateral system. You can remove the steel brace frames on that job now. You can remove a lot of the steel columns, the isolated footings, and we can enclose that. And you're not adding any cost to it. They were going to be CMU or cold form partition walls anyway. If you make them CMU, they can be part of the entire system. So we pitched this. That's the markup that we created on the top to see. I was in Omaha, met with the Kiewit team, pitched this to make sure they understood all the savings that's incorporated. And they said, we love this. Can you develop this a little bit further and get us a number? And so we're working on that this week, getting something over to them on Monday. So a big thing in our role is we're always talking to each other. We're always talking to each other's technical directors. And the big thing is how can we take the programs that we're approving and apply it to everybody? So there's a $1,250 program that Phil Ledent submitted for typical details that he wanted to do for the MIM in Michigan. I took that, expanded it to our region, took a little bit more details. But we've got a set of details with designer notes, sample calcs, all ready for our region to utilize. And we in our region consider this as indirect design assistance. We use dollars from our design assistance bucket to be able to apply this because this is helping structural engineers, architects know how to design and detail things. These are good starter details. Engineers and architects are intended to just plug this into their drawing set especially in schematic when they don't have time to develop details. They can plug this in and it'll help mason contractors develop a more accurate estimate. If a mason contractor sees a detail that they don't really know how to construct, what are they going to do? Add dollars to the project. And those are unrealized premiums that when an engineer didn't even think about it. So we're cutting all that out, cutting out the guesswork. Here are typical details that have been vetted by the specialty engineers, the mason contractors, and the industry as a whole. So right now, this is in QA/QC and is one of the things that Riley mentioned as resources for our launch. And here's an example of how we can make an impact into the local market anytime. In February, Watkins Reimer, a producer in Omaha, came to me and said, we've been trying for years to get into SEA, Nebraska. The structural engineers would not take a concrete masonry course. So we went there, we targeted them. So we went and had AEC meetings, we had AIA presentations, and we had meetings with the SEA group. And what that one trip, 3 days, resulted in is we got 3 webinars with the SEA of Nebraska, and we got a commitment. They asked us to present in their spring conference in 2026, and we're working through a really influential program for 2026 to influence structural engineers. And even till today, I get emails from a lot of those SEA members in Nebraska on improvements to their typical details because they didn't realize what impact they were having in our industry. The University of Nebraska asked us to come in and present on blast design for CMU because they didn't know that was possible. So we were able to connect them with an expert on that topic. They asked us to be in part of their SEA newsletter, and that's for free. We didn't have to pay for that either. And what that one trip in June resulted in was 4 project designs, about 125,000 blocks proposed. And that's not even veneer, that's just structural block. And I did this whole thing again just this week in Omaha with even more momentum. And what this left is Nebraska with momentum, with resources. We shared slides with them, so now they can go do this on their own, but we'll still be there to support them. So we can help local markets achieve success and tailor our abilities to what they think is most influential in their market. All right, that's all I got. Thank you. I think it's back to Riley or Kim.
Yeah, I'm actually going to turn it over to Kim. I know she's got some things prepared just to give us a look at what's coming up for the Block Design Collective.
I like to make a couple comments. This is Greg Gibble. I think this is the first time I've seen any real life quantitative case studies, and I think that's outstanding. I think that all of our producer members would appreciate some tangible wins. We haven't had a lot of those. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. So I think the effort of showing these wins makes a really big difference personally. So well done on those. I think, we should, try to make them concise, but be able to deliver this message of real wins out there to the field. Certainly going forward. I did have one other comment. I don't know who was at the CMHA meeting, but Clemson University had an AI project that was working on literally being able to spit out a masonry structure design, in seconds. And while it may not be there for every state and all the details that make it unique, I think we should understand who owns that information. I know Mark Wilhelms was involved with that, and incorporate potentially into this design collective to just accelerate the pace at which you all can respond to an inquiry with real design information. So just a couple comments.
Not to pile on with what Greg just said, but he beat me to it. This was great examples of tying some of our different projects together and showing some real wins here. So really nice job reviewing what you guys have been working on.
Yeah, thanks, Pat and Greg. I know Jason Thompson's involved in that AI, so we definitely will be working to incorporate that into this program. But I do want to thank Riley, Tino, Lauren, Chuck. Great job. Thanks for sharing all of that. And then thanks to the board members, Mike and Sam and Jamie, thank you guys for being on. They're the Block Design Collective board members. So really powerful to see that partnership working. I know there's been a lot of questions on how do we move forward? Where are we going with the Block Design Collective now that we're kind of shifting? I first want to say thank you to Riley. All this being presented, a lot of this background work had to get done, and Riley was at the helm of getting that done. So thank you, Riley. But as we go forward, I just want to lay out a few things that we're building. I sent you in your board packet the Block Design Collective strategic plan. Riley and his team basically went over that entire plan, but we've buttoned it up into a nice package that we can continue to refer back to and making sure that we're striving for the right things and the things that are really going to change the block market. So you can take a look at that. The other question we've had is kind of how will the organization be structured? At this current time, all the regional directors will report up to me, but we're going to have some support. That team, Lauren, Tino, and Chuck, they're eager to help kind of take some leadership roles and help us continue to move the Block Design Collective. So I'm confident that we're not going to lose momentum, and these guys are already willing and ready and stepping up as we speak. So a couple of things we're going to be doing between now and the end of 2025, and then as we move forward in 26, is increasing communications. So a lot of what I hear from you guys as board members is we think the Block Design Collective is probably doing a lot of great things, but nobody knows about it. So you heard a little bit of that today of what they are actually accomplishing, and we want to get that word out broader. So we're going to implement monthly updates from each regional director out to all the investors. So they'll be communicating with each of the folks in their region, as well as board members and staff, so that we're kind of all up to speed on all these great things they're accomplishing. And then the other thing we're going to implement is a bi-monthly report out to AEC. So this will be coming from them as directors as well. But it'll be kind of a forward-looking report on things they have coming up, tools that might be available to them, and really just getting that message out of who they are and how these designers can utilize the team. We're also, Lauren touched on this, she's doing that discovery questionnaire, but we're going to implement that as a whole team. And I know Chuck already has some targets that he's defined, but we want to, as a whole team, really be moving in the same direction. And so I sent you yesterday kind of this promotional and education plan. So you can see how we're outlining that, but this is just a few highlights from that plan that we're really going to be identifying those high impact targets with geographical markets, construction segments, and then AEC targets that we want to be engaging. And then we're also going to outline, so in that plan that I sent you, you can see how we're going to outline both in-person strategic meetings and how frequent those are going to happen as kind of our goals as a team, and then also virtual education. Greg, you've said it a few times, but we can definitely reach more people educating virtually. So we've shifted those in-person efforts are going to be more strategic meetings, and the big educational events will be virtual. And then we also have, you heard from Jamie and Sam and Mike Schuler, kind of this consulting network that we're building. Jason Thompson's going to take over leading this effort, making sure that we continue to build out the needs that we have. You know, as we get this going, we may find we have more demand than consultants. So he's going to just help making sure that that continues to flow well. So right now we have 15 consultants covering all 50 states. We're going to put together a consulting training this winter that Jason's going to lead for us, and making sure that all of these consultants are designing in the same way as one another. And Jason's going to really drive a less conservative or less costly way to design with block. And so we're going to make sure that we're being the most efficient we can be with our designs. And then
are those consultants, Kim, on retainer and just paid T&M?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. So if we send them a project, we'll pay them for that project. Yep. And then this is kind of the areas of expertise that you can see we'll be covering with those different consultants, that if we get a question, we've kind of outlined which consultants have which expertise and which states they cover. So we can direct those questions to the right people. All right. And then the other question I've gotten a lot is, we have Tino and Lauren and Chuck, they're kind of up and going, but we all can continue to learn. So what does our onboarding training plan look like? And actually Heidi and Jason have helped step up, and they are actually starting this next week with the training plan you can see here in front of you, and we'll record that. So as we get new folks on, this will be the training plan going forward. So this will take care of kind of the basic stuff that we have in the Block Learning Hub, so that all the directors are out talking about these topics in the same fashion. And then we also have some basic engineering courses that Jason will lead for us. So that'll be up and running probably within the next couple of months. We'll get through most of this content. And then the other question is, without a national director, how are we going to manage the things that was being done? And like I mentioned, this team's eager and ready to help step up and fill some of these roles. So these 5 blocks that you see, strategic direction, program management, design assistance, national engagement, content development, are kind of those big bucket items that were being done at the national level. And so we're going to divvy those up between us as a team. I will probably start with taking those top 2, and then we have 3 directors and 3 other buckets. So we'll probably let each of them lead one of these. So for example, if someone's leading content development, now they're really in charge and driving that development, where before we were doing it more as a team, which is great, but no one person was responsible for getting it done. So I think this will help us drive some things to completion as well.